As you know, when Donald Trump was running for re-election last year, he billed himself as the peace candidate. He was going to get us out of all these senseless wars that America was involved in all around the world. Although we're not actually party to any war, we're certainly not in any declared war, and there are no, U.S. soldiers in direct combat operations anywhere in the world. But that doesn't matter because reality and facts don't actually matter. These mindless Trump cultists live in a world that is entirely created by the mindless ramblings of their orange God King. And so Donald Trump created for them a world in which the United States not only was involved in wars all around the world, but that we actually instigated all those wars. And it was Joe Biden's fault. So, for example, apparently we were directly fighting the war in Ukraine. And Joe Biden somehow started that war, despite the fact that Russia illegally invaded Ukraine. And we were involved directly in the war in Gaza because Joe Biden somehow was responsible for that, even though it was Hamas who attacked Israeli citizens. And on and on and on. Everything was Joe Biden's fault. And so Donald Trump was the peace candidate, and he was going to get us out of all these senseless wars. Of course, soon as he won the election, he began threatening war against all kinds of countries. He threatened war and continues to implicitly threaten war against our NATO ally, Denmark, threatening to invade their sovereign territory and take it over, Greenland, because Donald Trump decided for some reason that he wants it. He constantly threatens Canada, although they've been standing up to him, so he hasn't mentioned it as much lately. But he threatened them with possibly the use of military force in order to take over their country and make it the 51st state. He's threatened Panama to take back the canal. He's threatened to ethnically cleanse Gaza so that he could take it over and build Trump hotels and casinos and golf courses, and on and on and on. And now it looks like he may actually be getting us close to war with Iran. I have an article here I want to read a little bit of for you. Here's the headline. War between U.S. and Iran has never been closer, and Tehran won't back down, warns an ex-UK ambassador. Let me read a little bit of this. This chilling warning comes as tensions between the two nations reach a boiling point, with sources claiming the U.S. and Israel are planning to launch strikes to destroy Iran's nuclear facilities. By the way, this article just came out today. Sir Richard Dalton described the situation as, quote, the most dangerous it has ever been. In an interview with BBC Newsnight, Sir Richard said, quote, the risk of a war between Israel and the United States on the one hand and Iran on the other has never been higher. Trump has warned Iran will face, quote, great danger if it fails to sign a new nuclear deal. Direct talks between Washington and Tehran will commence on Saturday, the U.S. president and convicted felon announced yesterday. The former diplomat said, quote, the Americans appear to want a very rapid progress towards a surrender by Iran on three fronts. Iran's not in the market for a surrender. They would be in the market for a serious negotiation. If a new deal can't be reached, it has been suggested Trump could launch strikes. But Sir Richard warned, quote, if they have discounted Iran's capacity to retaliate, I believe they're making a big mistake. Missiles and drones would be directed against American facilities in the region. It would cause massive disruption of oil trade out of the Gulf and might mean what was intended to be a short, sharp strike turns into a protracted conflict. Let me play for you a little of what he said.
I do take it seriously, the risk of a war between Israel and the United States on the one hand and Iran, on the other, has never been higher. And that's because it's been Israel's aim for many years to strike Iran, and they've always wanted to attract the United States to their side to do it because of limitations in Israel's capabilities, particularly in sustaining a long war. This is chiefly about weakening Iran as a state.
Okay, let me read just a couple. Don't play anymore. There we go. All right, let me just read a couple more sentences real quick here. The former ambassador's harrowing warning comes after Russia warned that a war between the West and its ally Iran would trigger, quote, an irreversible catastrophe. Of course, Putin is always, and his regime are always making threats, but just letting you know what they're saying. Quote, threats from outside to bomb Iran's nuclear infrastructure facilities will inevitably lead to an irreversible global catastrophe. These threats are simply unacceptable. Okay, so we have that. And by the way, Donald Trump just moved a whole bunch of bombers into position near Iran and made it very public. So it was very obvious to Iran what we're doing. So we have that going on. And then we have this. Trump administration weighs drone strikes on Mexican cartels. Let me read just a little bit of this. The Trump administration is considering launching drone strikes on drug cartels in Mexico as part of an ambitious effort to combat criminal gangs trafficking narcotics across the southern border. This according to 6 current and former U.S. military, law enforcement, and intelligence officials with knowledge of the matter. Now that doesn't sound terrible, right? We should be going after these drug cartels. We'll get to the problem in a second. Discussions among White House, Defense Department, and intelligence officials, which are still at an early stage, have included possible drone strikes against cartel figures and their logistical networks in Mexico, with the cooperation of Mexico's government. Still, the administration has made no final decision and reached no definitive agreement about countering the cartels, and unilateral covert action without Mexico's consent has not been ruled out. Well, let's just be clear. If Donald Trump decides to do that, if he decides to attack targets and people inside of Mexico with drone or other types of strikes, that could easily be considered by Mexico as an act of war and an invasion of their sovereign territory. Doesn't matter that Trump's goal and his aim may be a good one, taking out drug cartels, but doing so without Mexico's permission, launching military attacks inside Mexican territory without their permission could very easily be seen as an act of war. What Mexico might do in response, I don't know. Certainly, if Mexico is in agreement and works cooperatively with the United States to take out these drug cartels and their networks inside Mexico, that would obviously be a good thing. Just saying that to do otherwise, to do it without Mexico's cooperation, or more importantly, without their permission, that is a very bad thing. And we shouldn't even be threatening such a thing. But this is Donald Trump we're talking about here. He is a megalomaniac who gets off on the power that he can exercise and display. And I don't want to really get into this right now, but since it's on my mind, that's why he wants to do this military parade on his birthday, which, from reports that I've read, if you haven't heard about that, he wanted to do this in his first term, but was talked out of it. But there's no, sane and rational people in this administration to talk him out of doing these crazy things. He wants to have a military parade in Washington, with tanks and airplanes and military soldiers marching, all of this stuff, heavy artillery and all this stuff paraded through the streets of Washington on his birthday as a show of his personal strength. And estimates of the cost of this thing, the scale of which they're talking about, would be around $100 million. So if this is what he's planning on doing, I think this is one of those things that will blow up in his face spectacularly. Of course, his cult would love this, but this would be a very, very bad look. And I think it would damage him. So if he wants to go ahead and do this, since I want to see this man crash and burn, and if possible drive him out of office through impeachment, I think this only serves my interests and the interests of others who want to see this man crash and burn and to be driven from office. At a time when he is crashing the economy, when millions and millions are going to be losing jobs, losing their life savings, all of this because his insane tariffs. If he is going to spend $100 million on a parade basically to celebrate himself, this on top of the fact that we're spending tens of millions of dollars so that this man could play golf, keep doing that. Keep doing that. And this country is going to very quickly have a real French Revolution feeling going on. So if he wants to do that, go ahead. But anyways, all of this stuff is very dangerous. Now, obviously, the Iran situation with them getting nuclear weapons, that is certainly a significant national security issue for the United States. The problem is, do you trust this psychopath to be the one making the decisions in this regard? No, I certainly don't. You certainly don't, I'm sure. But this is what happens when we have an unserious population and who votes for the price of eggs, or they vote because they're in a cult and they watch Fox News constantly, or because they are racists or sexists, or because they've been made to be upset about a handful of transgender athletes competing in high school sports, and that kind of nonsense. And that kind of stupidity has real-world consequences. So who knows? We may soon find ourselves at war with Iran, which could have very devastating consequences, especially if other countries get involved there. Who knows? We'll just have to wait and see. But this is what happens when you have a psychopath as president. So good job, America. You really thought this one through, didn't you?